Good afternoon, Sifters. It is the week of January 30th, 2026. I'm Tyler Shervin with my co-host, Lucas Nolson. And welcome to today's installment of the weekly Sift Stack. A lot more to unpack for this week in terms of the Apple earnings results, the upcoming Amazon earnings on February 5th, 2026, and most importantly, we got a Super Bowl coming up, right? We got the Patriots back in against the Seahawks. Lucas, you got a pick for the upcoming Super Bowl?
Oh man, I hear those Patriots. I hear they're frauds. They had one of the weakest schedules in NFL history, so my
Well,
pick is the
majority of
Seahawks.
that schedule is fired coaches at this point, right? Is that correct? I
Yeah,
would think.
that's what I'm hearing. So my pick is Seahawks all the way.
And I can't believe that the Patriots are back in it, back in the Super Bowl before Josh Allen and the Bills.
I
Isn't
know
that
that's
crazy?
crushing for
Never would
you,
have thought.
Tyler, as a Bills fan. Hate to see it.
It's a crusher, all right. Yep. So we're going to get all the bases covered on the market news, the stock of the week as well. Talk a little bit about Groundhog Day that's coming up. Let's see how that's going to impact the weather because I know a lot of us been dealing with some cold. I guess, right. It's been a little bit chilly in Tennessee. You're always telling me before 80, 90-degree days. What's going on?
Man, I don't know what happened. I think you brought some of it down here, Tyler. It was 23 degrees this morning. I was freezing.
Hey, it's that revenge of that Buffalo Bills loss this year. So it's coming to hit all of the country. Hey, we'll get into it now. The taking a peek at the index tracker year-to-date performance for 2026, and this is as of market close January 30th, 2026. We are seeing the S&P 500 total return having a steady week, up 1.23% for the year. As well, the Bloomberg U.S. Aggregate Bond Index. We saw the fixed income markets relatively stable this week, not too much movement. Return of 0.06% for the year. Now, into more of the spicy stuff that we've been seeing. Gold came down from its all time high. We saw it last week approach over 5 grand per ounce. But as of Friday, January 30th, 2026, we saw gold drop 9%. And I know for a fact that is certainly going to make Lucas happy. Is that right?
Oh man, it makes me happy. Anytime one of these speculative investments drops like a tank, I'm happy.
Yeah, but unfortunately for the gold miners out there, it's not feeling like 1849 and they're getting a little sad. On the other news and that coin there, the flip side of that coin, we are seeing the US dollar index up almost 1% on this Friday. So we are seeing a stronger US dollar. And this is often attributed to the news of Kevin Warsh becoming the new Federal Reserve headed by President Donald Trump. So the battle of the two Kevins is resolved. And it looks like he went for the more handsome Kevin this time around. But the markets seem to have cooled down a lot of the concerns about how the Federal Reserve is going to be, what the policy is going to be. Is the central bank going to maintain its independence? It seems like the markets are responding positively with that. And we'll certainly talk about that further on the weekly insight. But what I'm eager to hear about, definitely one of my top companies that I buy items from. I find Amazon to be incredible just with how efficient it is with delivering things. Lucas has quite an in-depth research for us today on the stock of the week, Amazon, of course. So Lucas, you want to take that away?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Tyler. Yeah, Amazon, one of my favorite companies personally as an investment, but also as a company. Everybody knows Amazon. If you live in the US, I'm sure you've gotten a package somehow, some way from Amazon. It's a great service and a growing name that's just expanded nationwide. It's been a big part of the American day to day life. So, obviously, everybody knows Amazon. It's one of the biggest names in online consumer retail. It's also one of the big members of the Magnificent Seven, which we've talked quite a bit about on our show here. Amazon really recently, this past year, it's come under a little bit of scrutiny for some pretty poor performance in
Mhm.
2025. It actually underperformed the S&P 500 by almost 10%. Amazon was only up about 7% in 2025. So it really didn't compare nearly as well to many of those Magnificent Seven companies. It was actually the worst performer of the seven. Definitely hate to see it. Amazon still demonstrated some pretty spectacular growth throughout the year. They made some tremendous strides with their Amazon Prime services. I'm sure a lot of people watched some Thursday night football this year on
Oh
Amazon
yeah.
Prime, so definitely a big deal for them. But
Well, Lucas,
we'll
I
look.
am kind of curious. Why do you think the Amazon underperformed not just the Max 7, but also the S&P 500 for 2025? Any
Yeah,
insight with that?
I think it really comes down to a variety of reasons, but the big thing for me, I think, is definitely the capital expenditure growth. So, the investments that the companies are making, investors are a little bit cautious about some of the decisions that Amazon is making since their
Mhm.
new CEO, Andy Jassy, has stepped in. Investors have seen some of his investments as questionable. They're spending lots of money on AI, lots of money on infrastructure, and investors are kind of cautious. They're not so certain about how these investments are going to lead to long term profits and revenues. So that kind
Gotcha.
of remains to be seen, but we're definitely optimistic on Amazon's future. They've
Mhm.
made some tremendous progress really since the pandemic. So we're definitely excited to see what's to come for Amazon.
Well, hey, I'm curious. What are your thoughts on their core business strategies?
Yeah, so Amazon, everybody knows what Amazon is. We all have heard of it. But I really think that there's kind of a big misconception on how the business operates, what some of its business units are, and what they're responsible for. So everybody knows Amazon is the big e commerce company. We see the trucks driving around everywhere, all
Mhm.
over the street, delivering packages, things like that.
Those guys are
But
hustling. Those guys are
oh,
hustling.
yeah. I see them out there running the streets all day long. There's some hard workers.
Huh.
Everybody kind of thinks of Amazon as that e-commerce delivery company, but really they're more of a technology company. That's the way that I kind of see them. So one of their
Mhm.
big business lines is their Amazon Web Services, or AWS. Their current CEO, Andy Jassy, was the former president of the AWS division.
Mhm.
And this is really their cloud division. So they do a lot of work with businesses, business development. And I really see Amazon as a total company, really more of a platform for people to build businesses on. I think what Amazon is building is not quite fully grasped by the full market as of yet. But
Yep.
I really think that they're building this huge network for people to build businesses on and grow their reach as a business. So we'll definitely look to see how the AWS has done throughout the year. This is the business line that many investors are looking forward towards in their upcoming earnings report. That's really been their big business driver over the last 5 or so years, really since the pandemic started.
Mhm.
And it's really been one of their big profit drivers over the last few years. Their web services very low input relative to their total e-commerce business. They don't have to spend money on warehouses, trucks, labor, delivery drivers,
Yeah.
things of that nature. So their Amazon Web Service is a very low input but high cash flow business. They're making money
Mhm.
hand over fist with this AWS business. So that's what investors are really looking for. This is the business line that's been growing about 20% a year for many years. So investors are paying special attention towards this side of the business. So we'll definitely look to see how that goes. We're definitely looking
Yep.
forward.
But would you also say, for instance, that their warehouse and their delivery services that kind of provides the underlying stability for the company, whereas like the Amazon Web Services certainly provides just room for tremendous growth in the future to sum
Oh
it up?
yeah, definitely. That's a great point, Tyler. I think a lot of the big businesses that we see today, especially those Mag 7 companies, at least the most of them, they usually have that main business line that generates a lot of their revenue, that kind of keeps them in
Mhm.
business, is what they're known for. And we talked a lot about last week Apple. Their big main business item, that's the iPhone. They
Yeah.
do most of their sales on the iPhone. It's about 51% of their total sales, but their real profits are generated from the other things that come along with that iPhone. So the services, things of that nature. Everybody knows Amazon is that online e-commerce delivery company that you can just you get anything delivered straight to your door. But really what's driving their growth as of recently is that AWS service. So that's what
Mhm.
investors are really going to be looking for in this upcoming report. That's kind of the big thing. Oh, yeah. And on another note, another thing that investors are looking for is really coming up here over the next few years is, of course, Amazon's capital expenditure growth. And
Mhm.
I feel like that's one of the things that's really beaten that stock down, especially over the last year or so. It's been one of the underperformers. So investors are really paying attention to what is Amazon spending their money on? They're a strong cash flowing business. They're finally at that point in their business cycle where they're really, really starting to bring in some serious profits now, but they're now
Mhm.
spending a lot of their money on new investments. So, of course, AI, they're spending hundreds of billions on AI. And just this past week, they actually announced a huge partnership with OpenAI. They actually just signed a $50 billion investment commitment to OpenAI. So that sparked a little bit of controversy. How much of a return
Always.
is Amazon going to get from this investment? Are they going to see any of it? Is OpenAI really a legitimate company? A lot of people are
Mhm.
raising a lot of question marks around that. And I know we've talked about it on the past on the show. So it will definitely be something to watch here coming up over the next few years.
OpenEye always draws some questions. Is that not right? It seems.
There's been a lot of speculation about, is OpenAI, are they a Ponzi scheme? Are they actually a legitimate
Mhm.
business? There's been a lot of controversy between Sam Altman and Elon Musk. You know, the
Yep.
original intention of the company was supposed to be a non-for-profit, open
Nonprofit, right?
infrastructure AI company. So it's really interesting. There's some interesting stuff going on within OpenAI, how they've been able to sneak around that nonprofit filing. So we'll see what happens in the coming
Uh,
months with that, but it's definitely interesting.
well, the one last little interesting tidbit with the OpenAI that you mentioned there is I've over the past like week or two, I've transitioned from using ChatGPT over to Gemini. Yeah, I just because I feel like whenever I open up ChatGPT, it's not working. It's not functioning.
Oh yeah.
And Gemini is just right on the ball. It's night and day difference. I don't know what's up with that.
I'm
Any
100% with
thoughts
you
on that,
there,
Luke?
Tyler. I
Okay.
I agree with
You've
you
been seeing the same
100%.
thing?
I am
Yeah.
100% a full-in Gemini user now. I used to be all in on the ChatGPT, OpenAI.
Same.
Always loved
Yeah.
using their service for the last few years, but recently, I think Gemini has blown them out of the water, and I'm a big
Yeah.
Google smart home kinda guy. I've got my Google Home Minis, I've got my Google Doorbell, so I'm all in on Google, and I really think this partnership
Google
with Apple
champ
kinda
here.
reinforces them.
Back to the Amazon, the big earnings for next week. We have the Amazon earnings call coming up next Thursday. Keep your eye on it. It's going to be a very big deal. February 5th, 2026. And Lucas is going to give us his big three things to look out for. I'm very eager to hear. Let's give it a whirl, Lucas.
Three big things that investors are really looking for in this new report is, of course, holiday sales. We talked about it in the
Mhm.
past. Uh, 2025 was expected to be one of the big blowout years in e-commerce sales. Record spending, of course, for Christmas purchases, holiday purchases, things like that. So investors, number one, they're going to be looking for holiday sales.
Mhm.
Did they knock it out of the park? Did they not do so well this year? That kind of remains to be seen. So that's why this report is always so important. That last report of the fiscal year for Amazon, it's really the most important. So we'll see how holiday sales are. The next is, of course, AWS growth. We talked about that. Obviously, that's one of their big growers. That's their growing business unit. That's really what's driving most of the profit for the firm. So definitely want to see at least 20% growth. That's what investors are demanding. It's been their most
Mhm.
profitable, highest growing business unit. And then the next, of course, is capital expenditure growth. How much is Amazon going to spend? What are they spending the money on? Are they going to get a return on their investment? That's really what investors want to know. That $50 billion investment in OpenAI is drawing a lot of scrutiny. Are they going to get a
Mhm.
return? We don't really know. So that's going to be the three main things that investors are really looking for coming into this report on Thursday.
Hey, I am certainly gonna have my list out with Lucas's three things, have my ear on that earnings call, and write down on what's happening. Just like with the Apple earnings, which we're gonna touch base on in a minute, actually, right now. So going into Lucas's three big takeaways from this past week's Apple earnings call. So the first thing that Lucas had mentioned was, and Lucas, feel free to correct me as I go here, but how were the sales of the new iPhone 17? Right, that was a big component of how Apple is performing, and that was a huge success. Best quarter in history with 144 billion in total revenue. Just the iPhone brought in 85 billion, leading to that 23% increase year over year. Seems like people are loving those blue messages. They're not about the green messages, Lucas. It seems like they're going, people are still going the iPhone route and not so much the Google Pixel route. But in other news, we are seeing the development of AI was another big thing that Lucas had mentioned. Of course, Apple is late to the game, but it seems like they have an effective plan with the Apple Intelligence and Google Gemini, that being a fusion. Apple did confirm that multi-year deal with Google to use Gemini to power the next generation of Siri and other cloud-based AI features. And heck, if Lucas is the one out here endorsing the Google AI, Google products, it's got to be a good thing that Apple is getting into it themselves. The next big thing was the China recovery. And heck, I was super surprised about this. And Lucas, I'm curious to know if you were surprised about it, but they had a big rebound and it,
Oh
it
yeah.
defied the weak economic narrative in China.
Mhm.
And Apple's revenue in China surged 38% year over year
Wow.
growth, even with Huawei. Lucas, any thoughts on that? Were you, I'm sure you had to have been
Oh
kind of
yeah. I mean,
eyebrows raised with that.
I was absolutely blown away by that report. That was one of the things that was probably the most impressive thing to me overall in that earnings release, mostly just because of everything that we've been seeing coming out of China really over the last few months. We're in that big kind of trade war right now between the US and China. There's some bad blood between the two countries. People are not super happy about, some of the tariffs that we're seeing, and I'm sure that people in China are much more upset than maybe even people in the US are. So definitely was super surprised to see that. So pretty interesting stuff coming out of China there.
You speak with the trade war, trade tensions, geopolitical tensions everywhere. And there's certainly a trend of patriotic buying, reshoring, domestic production. And that's why this surprised me because I figured maybe the Chinese market is not big enough for both Apple and Huawei, but that proved to be wrong. And tariffs, yes, they cost Apple reportedly 1.5 billion in the quarter, but that's looking to have very minimal effect on their overall margins. And we're seeing the Apple stock price up a little over 3% this week, and about a 0.5% up since the earnings after the bell Thursday, January 29th, 2026, and through Friday, January 30th, 2026, market close. Overall, Apple had a very successful earnings report. Lewis, any surprises or any other takeaways that you had there?
I think the big surprise for me was definitely just the iPhone sales in general. We talked about this last week. The iPhone is really the most important item for the Apple company as a whole because that's an introductory stepping stone to get into their universe. So we
Mhm.
saw record sales of the iPhone. Obviously, the iPhone 17 was a big success. But what I really thought was interesting is service revenue was up an additional 14% year over year. So obviously, the iPhone is that introductory step into their ecosystem, but services are really what's generating that income for them. They have Apple Music, iTunes, Apple TV, all those little services that have those small little subscriptions that don't really seem
Mhm.
like much, but are just straight cash flow, straight margin for the company. So I was really excited to see, both the service revenue and the iPhone revenue up quite a bit year over year. So I'm really excited for the company, really excited for what's to come with that Google partnership.
Excited to hear that the blue messages are winning out from the green messages. Sad day for the folks that I got to do with the green messages. Next on the docket, new Fed head Kevin Warsh has won the battle of the two Kevins. And I was very eager to hear your perspective on this, Lucas. Now that the clouds have cleared, this has obviously been a major conflict and stress in the markets and in Washington for over a year now, but the markets have responded positively to this. And any key takeaways now, just hearing the news on it today?
I'm not super surprised, honestly, with the
Yeah.
pick. Everyone kind of knew what was going to
Mhm.
happen. We were going to get a very dovish guy coming in. What I'm really worried about is what's the next coming months going to look like? What's the process of getting the Fed chair in place? He has to get approved by Congress, so that will be a battle within its own. But
Yep.
then he also has to get along with the other Fed governors. He has to come to an agreement with them in terms of policy moving forward. So that'll be the big thing moving forward. I'm expecting what's going to create some pretty significant market volatility. We're in that midterm year, so we're expecting some pretty big ups and downs in the markets as there usually always is, but definitely something to keep an eye out for. But overall, I don't think I'm super surprised by this move.
Yeah, I don't think anybody that's been paying attention to this. It seems like this was the clear cut decision. The other thing I'm curious about though is the markets have been pricing in just two 25 basis point cuts in April and September this year, and that's been holding up for quite a while, even with obviously Trump getting his favorable Federal Reserve head. Do you think that changes or alters at all, or is it just going to stay along as projected?
I think once things get settled down as we get closer to June, towards the spring, summertime, I think we'll have a little bit more clarity on interest rates. We need to let him come out and speak a little bit, speak
Yeah,
on his intentions, things like that. I would expect that there will probably be more than two cuts, assuming he gets elected and implemented as the Fed chair. But I do think that the market is not pricing in as many cuts as I think there will.
that's all fair. Appreciate it, Lucas. Your takeaway on that. Now, the most important segment of this pod today. Groundhog Day is coming up this Monday, February 2nd, 2026. And not many people know this. Lucas is an expert with investments, but he's also an expert, I found out today, on Groundhog Day. So I have some questions because, there's a lot of things I don't know about this groundhog that I think a lot of people need to know, especially with this really rough winter we're all having here in the United States. And we got our fingers crossed for some good news on Monday. But Lucas, who the heck is this groundhog? Do you know the name of the fella?
Yeah, so I'm hearing the main groundhog. There's a lot of groundhogs out there, but I'm
Okay.
hearing the top groundhog
The
this year,
CEO
the,
groundhog.
the best of the best is Puxatawny Phil. I'm hearing he's about 139 years old. So, longest standing groundhog in groundhog history. Nobody's seen anything quite like it, maybe ever. But I'm hearing he drinks a special elixir that keeps himself alive for years and years and years. So, definitely some interesting stuff going on up there in Pennsylvania.
I might have to just travel there to see if I can get a little bit of that elixir. 139 years or whatever it is. That is crazy. And I'm curious here. Let me take a look at the Groundhog Day Wikipedia page for just a minute. They've done a really good job just keeping this tradition going. They got the two main guys or the couple main guys. They still look like they're from the 1880s. It's pretty wild. So just looking at these origins. So it looks like the Pennsylvanian Dutch were the ones to start this, and they had the Germans had a tradition of marking Candlemas February 2nd as Badger Day, on which if a badger emerging from its den encountered a sunny day, thereby casting a shadow, it heralded 4 more weeks of winter. Now, what I want to know, Lucas, what is your call? What is your call for Groundhog Day?
Oh man, we are 100% getting 4 more weeks. I know the viewers hate to see it, but we're getting
Yeah.
4 more weeks. This has been one of the coldest winters we've had in a
Yeah.
long time. So I hate to say it, but we're definitely getting 4 more weeks, no doubt.
Now, I'm on board with you there, but I got to run a fact check on this on the accuracy of the Groundhog Day because I know that a lot of people put their faith in Phil. So, looking at it here, just do some research. Most assessments of Phil's accuracy have given an accuracy lower than would be expected with random chance. Stormfacts Almanac gives Phil an estimate of 39% accuracy, and then Weather Underground gives Phil a 36% accuracy rate between 1969 and 2016.
Oh,
That's interesting, right? But hey, the top batters in baseball hit 300, right?
well, I'll tell you
Phil's
what.
right up there.
Let's hope he's wrong because if I'm a 139-year-old groundhog and somebody wakes me up early in the morning on February 2nd and it's freezing cold, I'm sure as heck going back in my hole. You're not
I
catching me
yes,
outside in that weather.
100%. So, next up on the poll question of the week, who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl Is it the New England Patriots or the Seattle Seahawks? For my heart's sake, I am going for the Seattle Seahawks, going all in.
Of course.
Lucas, that's your take too, right? Nobody wants to see another
That's
Patriots
right.
Super Bowl champ.
Yeah, we've seen these teams in the past, obviously some rebuilt dynasties.
Yep.
But I don't really have any bad blood on either of these teams. I know, Tyler, you as a Bills fan, you just hate the Patriots. But these are two totally different teams. Seattle
Yep.
knocked us out in 2014. I'll never forgive them.
Green
But
Bay Packers.
that's right. I'll have to go
That's
with
right.
the Seattle Seahawks this year. Slinging Sam Darnold. He's going to carry them all the way.
I'm sure the Jets feel really bad, or any team feels really bad letting go to
Man.
Sam Darnold.
Oh yeah, I bet.
All right. We hope you guys out there, all you sifters, listeners, you enjoy the Super Bowl. Next up, the last week's poll results. Which company do you think is most likely to come off the top 10 S&P 500 holdings in 10 years? And Apple led the way, 50%. And thank you. You guys agreed with us. I appreciate it. All right, Lucas, you want to finish off with the quote of the week?
Of Amazon.com, Jeff Bezos. If you're competitor focused, you have to wait until there's a competitor doing something. Being customer focused, this allows you to be more pioneering. I think that this is a great quote, and I think it goes really well with our quote last week from Steve Jobs. If you're
Yep.
focusing on what everybody else is doing, you're just going to get left in the dust. You need to focus on your customer, what your customer wants, tell them what they want, and that's how you pioneer. That's how you lead the way in your industry. So, great quote by Jeff Bezos.
I absolutely love that, Lucas. It brings up Henry Ford. He said, I think at that time, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said, if I built what people had wanted, I would just make a better horse carriage. But instead, he made the cars, people doubted it, and that it generated way more efficiency, way better living standards for everybody. We hope you all have a wonderful week out there, sifters. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Stay warm. All right. Thank you.
This material is for educational purposes only and is not intended to provide specific investment advice or recommendations. Investing involves risk, including loss of principal.